Okay, so this video is for like if you're coming from 3ds Max and you just want to know how to render things out in Blender. Now I came from an old version of 3ds Max and I stopped paying attention to Autodesk when they switched to the subscription model, which was a while back. And I had been using Mental Ray, which is a render engine built in, forever. And this new Blender 2.8 is just like so much better. So, in order to get to different render options, you click this camera, and there are three renders, and they're all really good. Well, three renders I recommend: Eevee, Cycles, and the Radeon Pro Render. Now you have to download the Radeon Pro Render, but it is amazing. It's so good. It's a free like professional render engine. Cycles is really good too. I use Cycles the most. Eevee is great, sort of, but I really like the look of Cycles in the Pro Render more than anything. So this is how to get to the render engine when you're rendering something. Now I'm in Cycles right now. In order to view how the render looks, you click this little circle here. There are these different options like a wireframe or something, but this last one I like using. So you can export OBJ files from 3ds Max. So you can import them in here. So I got this tank model I made a long time ago. I guess I'm still in the render engine view, but um, so this particular model is very large. So these options here, just move, rotate, and scale. You're gonna have to click the scale if your object is really large, and just drag it down to get it to look right. Now I'm gonna switch out of this render view by clicking back on this icon, just so things move a little faster. Now to rotate, it's the same kind of gizmo that you would see in 3ds Max, basically. Uh, the other thing, if you're rendering animations like me, um, you're gonna have to know how to add basic objects. So go up here to add mesh, and I'm gonna add like a floor plane. So this is a plane here. I guess scale this up. So this will be like a floor or a ground for this tank. Now, down here, this is the keyframing options. So record this, turns on auto keys, same as auto keys in 3ds Max. So you move, and you can move this around any way you want, and it adds a little diamond, just like the diamond you would see in After Effects. So you move that around, and it actually moves the object. Now, over here, it's the start and end of the animation, which is really nice. It's very clean. Better than 3ds Max, actually. A lot of things here are better than 3ds Max. Now, if you right-click on the keyframes, you can change the interpolation. So if you want it to be linear, Bezier, I guess is how you say it, and constant, which are the three main ones I always use. Now, another important thing is the camera. So you're going to have to make sure your camera in your scene is labeled camera for what I'm about to show you to work. And like not camera.001 or anything like that. So if you press 0 on the number pad, oops, you got to click in the viewport here. So 0, it goes into the camera view. Now this is what the camera is seeing. Obviously it's inside the tank, so I find the best way to move the camera, and I discovered this from an early tutorial, is press shift and tilde, and you can move around like a video game. Move the mouse and you look at different things. You press WASD, and you can position the camera like you're moving in a video game, which is the way I always use the camera now. I know there are different ways you can select and move it. I just feel like this is the best way. And again, you can animate this. So if I move positions over here. On the timeline, now the camera moves around. And that's great. This is already looking pretty good as an animation. Now, in order to add lights, you got to go up here to add, and lights, point, sun, spot area, same things you would see in 3ds Max basically. There's no mental ray lights, there's no special lights for the render engine. It's all uniform, which is great. I'm not used to seeing that kind of thing. So if you want to get outside of the camera view, you just press the middle mouse button and you can get out of that. So your camera is this little icon here, and you can actually physically animate this by moving around, but I don't really recommend that. So if you have these lights, you can move them around like anything else, and down here on this light bulb icon you can change the power and the color. And I'm not really seeing anything because I'm not in the render view, so I'm going to go back to the render view. You can see how it looks. That's what I always do. I always just click on here. I know there are other ways to do that, but I just prefer that. I'm going to delete this cube. So materials. Materials for me was very confusing coming from 3ds Max, but it's not really that confusing, it's just different. So down here is a material ball, and when you import an OBJ file, it kind of assigns a material, but in order to create a new material you just click this, and down here you have different options. So if you want a texture, like an image, you can click on this little circle and you can go to image texture and click like and load a picture of metal or something, which is what I always do for my animations. You can also go up to here to shading and do more advanced things. If you're familiar with node stuff, you can do this kind of thing, but I'm not going to go over that right now. And you can change all these different properties. You can also download materials online, free materials, and there are ways you can import those in here. I do think there are plugins that allow you to manage materials better, but I don't know, it's okay. I'm used to this now. I don't care. It's a little confusing coming from 3ds Max, at least I thought it was. And there's like a little material library here. I'm not sure if this came with a plugin that I bought or if these came with the 2.8. I purchased several plugins for Blender 2.8. But anyway, so let's say I have a base color, or I just changed the color of this, right? So now I got a different color here, and then I want to create a new material here. Just click new. For the ground plane, I'm just going to make it green. So now you got this really basic animation. You got lights, your object files, your object file imported, and this render engine loading everything. Now down here, this is an important function. In the render tab, this little camera, DSLR, I'm assuming, down here under film, there's a transparent mode. That's very important if you're bringing these animated sequences into After Effects, like what I do. That's very important to have. So I kind of wish this was more prominent. It's kind of buried down here, but whatever. Overall, I think that's about it, just to get you started with rendering animations. Because like I said, when I started using Blender, I didn't know anything about it, and all I wanted to do was make animations. I didn't even use it to model or anything. I actually believe Blender is the best modeling program you can get. I upgraded to Cinema 4D. You know, I left 3ds Max a while back, and I've been using Cinema 4D, but I still never really got into the modeling aspect of Cinema 4D. But Blender, in my opinion, is the best modeling program. So it's definitely worth learning. And let's see, I think that's about it. Just to get bare bones render. And of course, if you want to render your scene, you press F12, and that renders a still image. And if you want to render the entire sequence, you press Control F12, and that renders every image in your timeline. Now it saves to a folder in the C drive, and the folder called TMP. And there may be a way to change that, but I actually like it. So it just replaces whatever you rendered last. So that's where you go to find your files. It took me forever to find them when I was new to Blender.